thank you so much for being here. And before we go any further, we need a massive round of applause for the one person who made this possible, Linda Greaves. I can't even begin to imagine the hours and all the details. I mean, you're going to sleep really well when this is all over. I hope, because you've got it, you got it coming. So, I want to start out by talking about our emotions. We wild horse advocates are frequently accused of being over emotional. Well, I spent 4 hours yesterday out on the range with the pine nut horses, some of my all-time favorite animals. Zorro, who I have followed since he was just a youngster picking fights with whoever he could. Blue and his amazing mare Lady. Just, I mean, you feel like you're in the company of royalty or rock stars or something, and we're all just the paparazzi out there. It's hard not to be out there and be overcome with emotion. And I don't feel like that is something that we have to apologize for, because believe me, our opponents, the very ones who call us over emotional, they have their own set of emotions that they bring. And you can, when they're talking about how over emotional we are, their emotions are what's driving that, right? So the thing about emotions is emotions drive passion. We are all passionate about this work to try and save these animals and to preserve our public lands. Passion fuels a search for the truth. And the search for the truth leads us to the science and the evidence that backs up our position and what we are all advocating for. So don't ever apologize for being over emotional. And when people, if someone ever says, well, you're just being emotional, I mean, you're damn right I am, because I feel all the emotions. I feel, of course, I feel anger, frustrated. I feel heartbroken when we win, like the litigation. Inside, I just. And the fact that we won 2 victories within a week, and the fact that these victories were all about the fact that the advocates pointed out the truth to impartial judges, and by doing so forced the BLM to mind its own rules and bring the public into the process. That is what our opponents don't want to see. They want the Bureau of Land Management to continue rubber stamping itself without any opportunity for anyone to stop it. And we all know sometimes this feels like a freight train that is just out of control and there's no brake on the lever. Well, guess what? What we have shown is that there are some hands on that brake, and if we stay in this fight and we support the right people that are doing all the good things, we can make these important wins happen. And it's just one step that we take to get more people involved and slow down the government that seems so out of control and so unresponsive. Okay, so I want to talk about I don't want to go down any rabbit holes here, but I want to talk about the federal bills that are pending. And I want commitments by everyone that you're going to take action. Now, there may be some of these bills that I'm going to mention that you may not agree with, or maybe you don't think are as important, but whatever you feel like is important, I'm hoping that you will all commit to taking action. First and foremost, the Save America's Forgotten Equines, or SAFE Act. The SAFE Act has to be viewed as the backstop of all the other equine welfare issues. Everything from soaring to racing to rodeo to wild horses and burros, all of it. If we can stop slaughter, that changes the entire equation. Okay, so I've been in touch with Britta Hessla from Advocates for Wild Equines. She was in 11 meetings on Capitol Hill yesterday. There's a lot going on. As you know, we're trying to get the SAFE Act added as an amendment to the Farm Bill. She says that the Farm Bill is actually now moving, and there is likely some action that is going to happen in the next 30 to 60 days. So, on the SAFE Act, that's HR 3475, we need you to find out, do the basic research, and find out if your members of Congress sit on the House Agriculture Committee, because that's the gatekeeper for getting the SAFE Act onto the Farm Bill. And it's easy enough to do. You know, look up your members of your House member and find out what committees they're on. But if you have a problem with that, or if you're struggling with that process, go to Advocates for Wild Equines Facebook page, get in touch with them, send them a message, and they will help you. They do outstanding work in helping advocates with their messaging and so forth. The Wild Horse and Burro Protection Act, that is HR 3656. This is Representative Dina Titus's bill that bans the use of aircraft to manage wild horses and burros and forces the federal government to find more humane options. That's an important one. The EJOW Act of 2023, this is HR 6021. EJOW is the gelatinous substance that forms when you boil the hide of a donkey. And in some parts of the world, it is viewed as some sort of medicinal folk remedy. Of course, it has absolutely no proven health benefits whatsoever, but neither does powdered rhino horn or tiger bone or shark fin soup. Be that as it may, if we can stop the commerce in this country in EJOW, that at least secures some sense of safety for our donkeys and, of course, for wild burros that are in the crosshairs for roundups. The Veterans for Mustangs Act. This is HR 726. More controversial because it's all about training veterans to do birth control, and you know, we have some controversy over birth control. I know Cameron Ring, the guy behind the bill. He's a great friend of mine, and what I have encouraged is that this bill be expanded so that we can get veterans involved in more than just fertility control. Let's get committed veterans out there on the range to count horses. Let's stop just sitting at, having bureaucrats sitting at their computers, conjuring up numbers about what the population. Let's get actual, people who are good at going out into wild places, and let's get them counting horses or doing, range cleanup, developing range infrastructures, all those kinds of things. The Veterans for Mustangs Act, HR 726. We are, as you all know, it feels like sometimes we are up against bureaucracies and powerful interests that are not responsive. And it all goes back to the path forward. The path forward is the deal that was struck between the big national humane groups and the meat lobby. And the deal was that tens of thousands of wild horses and burros would be removed from their habitats in Western federal public lands. And in exchange, none of these animals would go to slaughter. Well, that was a bad deal because we are seeing unprecedented numbers of wild horses and burros landing in kill pens and thrust into the slaughter pipeline via the BLM's adoption incentive program. And what is disturbing to me is that those humane groups that signed on to this path forward deal are not holding the other side's feet to the fire. The National Cattlemen's Beef Association, the Public Lands Council, who are part of that path forward agreement, they are on Capitol Hill all day, every day, lobbying for horse slaughter. And the humane groups are doing nothing to say, hey, part of the deal was that none of these animals would go to slaughter. And so, it feels very discouraging because that's sort of the foundation. That's the political cover that the BLM needs to do what it's doing. And now we're starting to see some environmental groups actually joining the side of the Bureau of Land Management, which is inexplicable to me. For example, the Salt River horses of Arizona that are actually, this is the Forest Service. And here you've got national environmental groups bringing a lawsuit against the Forest Service to force it to remove one of the most popular and beloved and unique wild horse herds in the country. Now, it has caused an enormous backlash. It's been a major problem for these environmental groups that they signed on to this. But nevertheless, they need to be called out. And if you care about animal welfare, if you support wild horses and burros on public lands, you need to call out these organizations that are taking the side of the beef industry and pushing for the eradication of our wild herds. And when we talk about how sometimes it feels like no one is listening, right? That no matter what we do, no matter how many of us get involved, there's still no response. Well, I mean, of course. Let's look at McCullough Peaks. You had over 6,000 public comments offered in opposition to the BLM's plan to conduct that bait trap operation. That was absolutely heartbreaking because that's such a lovely herd and a small herd. And you had 6 ranchers that are benefiting from that roundup, and over 6,000 public comments submitted in opposition. And many of those comments came from organizations that represent tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people across the country. And so how can it be that our federal government can see that level of opposition, but instead side with just a tiny little group of entitled individuals that are going to benefit financially from this operation? Well, you have to step back and put it in a bigger context. You've got, for example, look at what is going on in the Theodore Roosevelt National Park. You've got the National Park Service hell-bent on eradicating that historic herd. And you have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of ordinary North Dakotans that have spoken up, people from all over the country and the world who have spoken up, who have said, we come to this park to see these horses. The governor, the entire congressional delegation from North Dakota, they have all spoken up. And yet still, there is no indication from the National Park Service that they're going to even listen to all of that. This tracks what I have observed in my career. When I was working for the Humane Society of the United States, I was the Oregon State Director, and we joined with a coalition of national and state-based organizations to try and regulate in a reasonable way wildlife trapping in Oregon, the use of these steel-jawed leg hold traps and wire neck snares and so forth. And despite all of this public support, and people from all over Oregon came in and commented and said, we've got to improve this. We've got to address the suffering that's happening, and it was important to a lot of Oregonians. And of course, the Oregon Fish and Wildlife Commission said, no, petition denied. We're not going to do this. So a public records request revealed emails back and forth between Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife staff that said, these people that are pushing for this change in our trapping laws are not legitimate stakeholders. We need to listen to our customers, a few hundred licensed trappers. A few hundred licensed trappers, about 6 of whom took the time to register their opposition to the petition. That's who Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife listened to. This is systemic. This is not just a BLM issue. This is not just a federal government issue. This is not just a wild horse issue. Look at what is happening in Wyoming. You've got this guy who runs down a wolf and tortures it. And the outrage, the global outrage, has just been incredible to watch. The testimony in front of the Wyoming Fish and Game Commission yesterday was inspiring. But there is, if I was a betting individual, I would say it's very likely that they might say some pretty words. They might issue some sort of, they sent out a condemnation. This does not align with Wyoming's values. Hell, it doesn't. This is what we're up against. It's systemic. This is how our system works. The way our system works is, and sorry, this is the American way. The BLM and these agencies do what Congress gives them the budget to do. And Congress gets campaign donations from very powerful interests that depend on the system staying the way it is. We talk about ultimate accountability. The Bureau of Land Management does not bear ultimate accountability for this. And even Congress doesn't bear ultimate accountability for all this. Ultimate accountability is to JBS, the largest meat company in the world. When you go to the restaurant or the grocery store and order beef, you're buying beef from JBS, a Brazilian company. When you order pork or buy pork, that's probably Smithfield, which is owned by China. The people, that we would loosely consider the oligarchs, the most powerful, economically powerful, and politically powerful people on the planet. That's where the ultimate accountability is. You look at J.R. Simplot. I'm an Idaho boy, and J.R. Simplot is an Idaho-based company. And when you grow up in Idaho, J.R. Simplot, the man, is sort of like a legend, because he built this enormous company. Well, J.R. Simplot used to just be a potato company. They just made French fries. But they are now a massive beef producer, and they have BLM grazing allotments in multiple states where they raise hundreds of thousands of beef cattle. So we, the American taxpayers, are subsidizing a giant multi-billion-dollar corporation's ability to graze livestock on our public lands. So they're getting enriched on the front end. And on the back end, they're being paid millions and millions by the federal government to hold on to wild horses. They're kept in feedlot conditions for their entire lives. And who is the federal government going to listen to? Because I can tell you, J.R. Simplot has their lobbyists on Capitol Hill too, to make sure that the system stays the same. When we talk about changing the system to make it more accountable to the taxpayers, I'm sorry, but that is not how our system is built. Politicians are out there saying, we got to take care of the taxpayer. We got to take care of the taxpayer. But that is not how it works, because we, the American taxpayers, are hardworking people that don't have the kind of money to make contributions to Congress like these big global interests do. That doesn't mean we give up. It means we get organized. And it means we put our differences aside, because those global interests and members of Congress and these federal agencies are banking on the groups, certainly in the wild horse space, continuing to fight and bicker amongst ourselves. I am absolutely merciless in my criticism of the Bureau of Land Management. Absolutely merciless. I am merciless in my criticism of the beef industry and its effect on animal welfare, public lands, all these things. But when I see the BLM do something right, I thank them. I make a point of going out of my way to say, hey, you're doing the right thing. Thank you. When I see the Humane Society of the United States, who I left on less than positive terms with because of their participation in the path forward, when I see them doing something good, I make the point of thanking them. I thank American Wild Horse Campaign all the time for the good work that they do, even though they're controversial among the advocates. I appreciate the fact that that Senator Ira Hansen accepted my challenge to debate. I have enjoyed and been enriched by my relationship with Senator Hansen, even though he's over here and I'm over here. I believe that that relationship is part of why I was invited to this roundtable discussion, several weeks ago, where I was still in my walk-in boot, my boot of shame from my ankle surgery. I walk in there and Senator Hansen comes up, Scott, what did you do? I said, this is my Ira Hansen ass-kicking boot, but dude, you better be ready. But I sat there on that round table, and I was the only person, there were 6 of us, and I was the only one there to speak up for the horses. But how lovely that these anti-horse people invited me to be part of that conversation. And even though that crowd was muttering and growling at me through every word I said, they were like, you know what? They had an opportunity to hear the other side of the issue from someone who understands the other side of the issue. And I said things that were conciliatory. I said things, I really tried to put a positive spin on the fact that I was there in the first place. So I think that one of the things that we can do is stop throwing rocks at each other. And if someone says something or does something that you don't agree with, or that you don't understand, or that alarms you, or whatever, don't go to Facebook and start blasting away. Reach out to that person one-on-one and say, hey, I do this. I do this at least 3 or 4 times a week. I reach out and say, hey, you said something about me, or you said something about this, and I just want to touch base with you and find out what's going on. And man, you can avoid so much misunderstanding and miscommunication, and it goes a long way toward building better relationships, and ultimately makes us more effective and stronger as an advocacy group. Again, we're not going to change the system in our lifetime. But the fact that we are engaged and that we are working on getting more organized, that we are getting better at finding the facts and the science and the evidence that supports our position, it's just we're taking it down one chip at a time, and we have to step back, look at the long game, and look at where we are in history. You guys, we are living in some dark days, and I fear they're going to get even darker. We are living in a time of extreme divisiveness. We are living in a time when people in this country, half the country looks at the other half of the country as the enemy. Not Vladimir Putin, not China, not the real enemies, but other Americans, our next door neighbors. And you have to understand that that's where we are in history. And so a lot of what is happening right now with our wild horses, and it seems so insurmountable and we're not being listened to, that again, step back and look at the meta picture and look at how this is just part of everything else that's going on. Israel and Gaza, Ukraine and Russia, the rise of authoritarianism. History goes like this, you guys. It goes like this. And right now we're headed up here, and it could get really dark. It could be a really painful time, but you know what? This is human history. Just look at how it's been since civilization started. We're just caught up in that. And hopefully things are gradually getting better, even though it feels like a process of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So keep that in mind. Don't lose hope. And don't let the mean people define your mood, because there are mean people out there. And it's not just mean people on the other side. It's also mean people on our side. Develop a thick hide. Strive to understand where others are coming from, and strive to see the good and the pure intentions. for example, maybe you don't agree with the Veterans for Mustangs Act because it pushes the narrative that we need fertility control. But look at the motivation behind it. These are veterans who just want to help and who think, well, gosh, if I can use my training as a way to lessen the need for helicopters, why isn't that a good thing? And yeah, I mean, is the bill perfect? Absolutely not. Can it be improved? I sure hope so. But the fact that the bill was introduced, it was introduced with good, pure, positive intentions. And I have met with some of these veterans, and they are fantastic people, some of whom have made incredible sacrifices for this country. And they just want to help. They love horses. They have been healed by horses. They've been around horses. I mean, I've talked to veterans who said, I didn't feel understood until I met a BLM Mustang. I didn't feel like anyone could understand what I have been through with the trauma that I've seen until I met a BLM Mustang that went through what he or she went through. That's pure. That's good stuff. And people like that need to be involved in this, and we need their help. And you know what? That bill, Republicans love it, because Republicans are all about supporting service members, and they that's part of their thing. And so that's a way to get more Republicans on the side of wild horses. One of Oregon's congressmen, the one Republican congressman from Oregon, came from a Eastern Oregon ranching background. He's a very, very smart man, and very anti-wild horse, very anti-native carnivore, but he heard about this bill, and he thought, I think this is a great idea. This is a win-win. This is a win for the wild horses. It's a win for the veterans. It's a win for the taxpayers. And so again, see the good. You can find it. That's where your focus needs to be. And when you see someone, even if it's someone, an agency that we're fighting against, and we got so much, when you see them do something good, you call them out, because that also brings them to a little bit closer place of understanding with us, right? All right. So later this month, I am going to be going to Washington, D.C., and I'm going to be there for the congressional screening of Wild Beauty, Mustang Spirit of the West. And what a gift it was to be a part of that important film. It was a serious contender for the Oscars and was in the running up until they made that final last cut with the nominations. But I can't think of a better way to introduce your average American citizen who otherwise wouldn't know anything about this issue than showing them that movie. It's streaming live, or it's streaming on all the streaming platforms. It captures you with the incredible cinematography of wild horses out there on their beautiful habitats, but then it also uses actual facts and data to expose what's going on to our wild herds. So anyway, I could literally talk all day if they let me, but I am just thrilled. I am just thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled that all of you are here. This has been a great conference. Linda, again, can't thank you enough. And you all know how to reach me. Feel free to reach out anytime. Let's collaborate. Let's work together. And we're going to have these victories. 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but we're going to get there. So thank you.